get back to life.
Hi.
Speakers, Madame Evelyn Shilamba, I will be the first speaker, carried over from yesterday. The second speaker will be Dr. Duncan. And then we will move to a panel discussion looking at the issues raised yesterday, followed by the program for today, which is reparation and repatriation and re-education. And that panel will be led, I believe, by Miss Leticia and moderated by Mr. Stephen Golding. So the panel discussion will be led by Mrs. Leticia Davis Mattis, who is the chairman of the National Council on Reparation, and will be assisted by Mr. Stephen Golding, a member of the council, and it will have also Professor Rupert Lewis, and I believe there's one other person who will be joining by Zoom. So I will ask Mrs. Shilamba, who is a board member of PACAN. PACAN is the Pan-African Center for Namibia, an active center promoting Garvey's and other African heroes to the continent and to Namibia. Without further regard, I would want to ask Mrs. Silamba to speak. Now she's on the line. Mrs. Can you make the connection? By telephone. She was unable to be present. So she will make her presentation via Zoom. Yes. Go ahead, Mrs. Chumamba. Mrs. Chumamba, Mrs. Chilamba, how do we connect her by Zoom? Okay, we're having some technical difficulty here now. So Mrs. Lambert, can you stand by? Mrs. Chilamba, can you unmute? Can you unmute yourself? Mrs. Chilamba, can you unmute? Can you unmute? Can you unmute her? Can Mrs. Chilamba unmute?
Yes, can you hear me, Prof? Prof. Taylor.
Yes. Can you hear me, Mrs. Chilamba?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh.
Good morning and win today. I greet you all in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Despite the challenges we face,
She's not on video, she's speaking. Mrs. Chilamba, we're not hearing you. Yes.
I think she's having connection trouble, Prof. Ras, send me her number. Let me give her a quick call.
Go ahead, Mrs. Chilamba. Otherwise, we'll have to move on.
great.
Mr. Taylor, try to mute everyone on the call.
Volume stuff on. She need to mute one and speak into the other. Yeah.
Mr. Taylor, I think you should mute it.
Okay, then.
Good morning.
Okay. Go. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Prof. Taylor. Good morning and win today. I greet you all in the name of our Lord Jesus and Savior Christ. Despite the challenges we face daily amidst this evil pandemic corona, God has made it possible for us to be here. He is Jah, Okechi, Allah, Kalunga, Mungu, Chineke, God the Creator. We praise his holy name. Amen. I'm honored to share the same platform with His Excellency Dr. Sem Nujoma, the first president of the Republic of Namibia, and the founding father of our nation, as well as the patron of the Pan-African Center of Namibia, PACON, which I represent today in my capacity as a director. Prof. Taylor recognized the Right Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, the land we love, who is with us in spirit. I was opportune to meet him during his visit to Namibia in 2018, and Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Education, Gender and Culture, who was part of his delegation. Dr. Julius Garvey, the torchbearer of the Garvey family, whom I came to know during the planning and organizing of the PACON, Pan-African Posthumous Icon Award, that was bestowed upon his father, the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Sr., the first national hero of Jamaica, who we are celebrating. It is a divine intervention by the mighty God that Jamaica gains its independence from Britain in the month of August, and that Marcus Garvey was born on the same month. This gathering and celebration is indeed magnificent. I recognize all the speakers before me: Honorable Anna Hipondoka, Ambassador Dr. Arikana Chihombori Kad, Prof. Shepherd, Prof. Kimani Nehusi, and Ambassador Hess. My fellow panelist, Stephen Golding, Prof. Lewis, Dr. Duncan, as well as Ms. Laleta Davis-Matters, the moderator. Thank you for your contribution to the discussion. Yesterday, we had an opportunity to hear about our history and the current situation that we find ourselves in today. Calls have been made for us to take resolutions during this 4-day-long symposium for implementation. We cannot talk of Africa unity without speaking about the fundamental issues that cause us to fight for our liberation in the first place. That is land, land, land. And the free movement to move around and live wherever we desire to. As much as we say we are independent nations, these issues remain the barrier to our total freedom. We cannot talk about peace, stability, and security without talking about land, because the control of land is the source of conflict. Our people are displaced, we are living in makeshifts, and we have no place to call home. We cannot speak about food security and prosperity without talking about land, because there can be no food production without land. Land is the source of prosperity. Land is the real estate that allows you control over your future. Agricultural activities take place on the land. Extraction of mineral resources is done on the land. Construction of houses is done on the land. I would like to commend Jamaica for embarking on a housing project that will see an end to informal settlement. If a tiny island of Jamaica, which is about 2 times the size of Windhoek, can do that, surely any African country can do that for its citizens. Because freedom, as the Honorable Prime Minister has said, start with home, where we feel secure. The main reason for the Herero Nama genocide by the German colonizers was because of land. They enacted laws that prohibited native Namibians to own land and livestock because they know the importance of land as a source of prosperity. Not owning land is the cause of poverty, whether to an individual or a country. We cannot expect things to get better if we continue to please those who are benefiting from our misery. Our lawmakers must take drastic action to change colonial laws that were implemented to disadvantage us. African governments must take drastic actions to repeal laws that make the descendants of our colonizers remain in control of our land. The land distribution must take place if we are to speak of unity and embrace one another. Those who claim to love Africa and call it home should be willing to correct the past mistake for the sake of peace. African governments must stop selling land to multi-corporations, but instead should lease their land to generate income in order to ensure sustainable development and a livelihood for the generations yet unborn. If the colonizers of Africa could create laws for their self-interest as minority, what is preventing our African governments to change those laws in the interest of the rightful owners and majority of the people? One thing the minority haves must know is that as long as the majority of the African people do not have land, they will continue to look over their shoulders as to what will they do when they come for such land. I would like to congratulate Jamaica, as I said earlier, for embarking on a sustainable housing project for its citizens to do away with informal settlements. If Jamaica, a small island of 10,901 square meters, which is about 2 times the size of Windhoek, can do it, certainly African countries with vast of land can equally build decent houses for its citizens. It is an achievement that the AU has introduced the African Free Continent Trade Agreement, but we should not get complacent, for as long as the free movement of Africans in Africa is not realized, we are a long way to economic freedom. As Marcus Garvey said, Africa for Africans, in the continent and in the diaspora. The African Union should unite and remove all barriers that make it impossible for Africans to own land and move freely in their motherland. Ambassador Chihomborikwad is on record about the repulsive deals that France did with its former colonies. Prof. Jeffrey Schaas, the Sustainable Development Goals advisor, is on record about the illicit deals that continue to exacerbate poverty in Africa. Dr. Jonathan D. John of the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, indicates that according to the Global Financial Integrity Reading, the illicit flows from Africa between 1970 and 2020 stood at $1.8 trillion. The underfunded public services, such as education and health in Africa, is as a result of multinational corporations not paying tax where they are making vast revenue. This contributes to inequality and income disparity. We were all celebrating and are still celebrating the bold decision taken by Ghana when President Nana Akufo-Addo told Switzerland that the exportation of raw cocoa will no longer continue. Such a drastic and bold decision that Africa needs to take in order to change the status quo of being poor while endowed with abundant resources. Drastic decisions are needed to save and to ensure the future of the youth and the generations yet unborn. The youth of Africa cannot continue to be slaves when their forefathers have already sacrificed their lives to fight for liberation. Africa cannot continue to be enslaved by the World Bank, the IMF, and its former colonizers due to borrowing and unjust interest rates charged on those loans. As individual governments, African countries are disadvantaged when negotiating with Great Britain because it is the United Kingdom. So it is Washington because it is the United States of America as well as China. African governments must speak with one voice through the African Union to bring about desired changes. The AU must put an end to tax evasion, illicit dealing, exportation of raw materials, and debt bondage. The AU must work through the International Court of Justice to prosecute criminals who are destabilizing the economy of Africa. The AU must hold the United Nations accountable for its role to ensure peace and security in Africa. The UN can no longer afford to look the other way while Western countries are destabilizing Africa. Marcus Garvey said, great principles, great ideals, no nationality. It is in the best interest of progress and humanity for all world leaders to do the right thing. African leaders must commit and dedicate themselves to govern with integrity for the benefit of all. We should uproot corruption, ensure good governance among African leaders at any level. Our livelihood will change for the better. Our infrastructure and road network will develop. Our education and health system will improve greatly and become affordable. We will be able to offer free education and create a system that suits our needs rather than continue with the colonial system that denied our people the right to education. The importance of free education can never be overemphasized. It is imperative for our leaders, especially the political leaders who are elected by the masses and entrusted to lead and make decisions for the interest and the good of society, to act unison when it comes to issues of development. Africa cannot afford to be divided according to whatever that was done to please those who colonize us. We are not the language we speak. They ensured that we speak their languages so we can lose our self-worth and identity. Our enemy is not our brothers, but the systematic poverty created by colonialism. Therefore, we should not fight one another on the basis of the languages we speak. The recent concluded Pan-African Parliament session in South Africa was an embarrassment, to say the least. We cannot afford to waste resources on issues that continue to drive us apart. It is my view that humility and integrity are the best foremost qualities of a leader. Our governments and institutions should be of laws rather than of men. Our leadership should be committed to serve and not become masters, for service to humanity is the best work of life. The AU must find a lasting solution to ensure that the Pan-African Parliament fulfills its mandate for the benefit of Africa.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Shlamba.
Prof, I'm about to finish. Thank you. The AU must find a lasting solution to ensure that the Pan-African Parliament fulfill its mandate for the benefit of Africa and should not be turned into a battlefield for individual glorification. It has taken 400 years, over 400 years, for our brothers and sisters in the diaspora to know that they have a home, motherland Africa, that they are welcome to settle as they desire. The realization of Marcus Garvey's dream of back to Africa. Africa is their roots. Let every barrier that hinders their rightful participation in the AU be removed. The AU must speedily make this possible. In the word of Marcus Garvey, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Let us embrace one another with love. One love, one heart, one aim, one destiny, Africa united. I thank you. My God bless you.
Mrs. Shlamba, we're going to make a little change and we're going to form the panel, and we're going to ask that we move straight into the session on reparation, and we will incorporate the other speaker who
Professor, you're on mute.
Yes, I wanted to say I couldn't hear him again.
Professor, you're mute. Professor, you're mute. Professor Earl, you're mute.
He's frozen, Marcia.
No, his mouth is moving. Professor Earl, we can't hear you.
I'm going to introduce a small change into the program because we have limited time. So I'm going to ask the speakers who were carried over from yesterday to incorporate themselves under the new theme for this morning. And I'm also going to ask you to respect the time. We have given each speaker 5 to 8 minutes to express their point of view.
Great.
We do not have unlimited time. I know there's a lot to be said, but we have to say it in as much as we can within the time. So we're going to ask the speakers to kindly respect that rule. Otherwise, I may have to intervene and it's not so nice. And I don't want to be unnice, but if I have to, I will be.
I got you, Prof.
Okay.
But I'm
Ladies
done,
and
right?
gentlemen, Is Mrs. Leticia, is she here, and is she willing to be part of the next group where she makes her presentation and then lead the discussion? Can Mrs. Leticia identify where she is? Okay, all right. So we are going to look at the theme reparation, repatriation, and re-education. And in this list, we have a number of speakers. Professor Joseph Disho, a former CEO of the Namibia Institute of Public Administration and Management, and now a visiting professor at the University of Bonn. We have Dr. Elijah Guari, who was the Secretary General for the National Youth Council.
The Secretary General of the SWAPO Party Youth League.
Yes, thank you.
Most welcome.
We have Mr. Samir Buchanan, who is the Senior Director of Strategy and Innovation and Organization at Alta Medical Services in California. Dr. Maxine Clark, Director of Reading at the World Strawberry International School in Bangkok. And that will be followed by the panel discussion led by Mr. Bert Samuels, Mr. Michael Barnett, and if Mr. Leticia Mattis is with us, she will then take leadership of that panel. So without going any further, I'm going to give the floor to Professor Joseph Disho.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? You can. Thank you.
Yes,
so
we
very,
can,
very much.
Joseph. We can hear you.
Thank you so very, very much. Professor Taylor, you are so kind and you're so generous in your spirit to have organized this. And I feel particularly honored to join the distinguished contributors of yesterday and today, particularly the fact that the founding president of the Republic of Namibia had the time to say a few words about both Marcus Garvey and Jamaica. Those of us who have followed the events leading to our national independence as such are so mindful and are so indebted, if you will, to the efforts of the Africans in the diaspora, particularly in Jamaica, Trinidad, and perhaps lesser known islands, without whose efforts, dedication, sacrifice, and commitment, our struggles across the African continent would not have been meaningful as they were.
Indeed.
Thank you very, very much, Jamaica, for honoring us in this way. Thank you very much for leading us to understand our Africanity. I say this because I'm more than conscious that without those who were stolen away from the African continent, we would not have begun the process of emancipation of the African people. Those of us who went to school outside of South Africa, outside of Namibia and the likes, are too aware of the efforts of other Africans who have never set foot on the African continent to help us become free. I'm very, very, very honored to be part of this, and I want to just say three things. I would have hoped that by now, African states would have been consistent and persistent and consequent, if you will, with regard to the collaboration that was started during the struggle for national independence. There was more unity among Africans during the days of struggle. That unity appears to have dissipated once African nations attained their independence. I would hope that we return to that meaningful unity and oneness of the African people. Number two, I would have hoped that by now African states as such would have incorporated in their national planning the involvement, participation, relevance, and inclusion of the Africans in the diaspora. I am still puzzled that it's not part of African planning to say that those who are in the diaspora must have a home across the African continent. There seems to be a degree of lip service to the diaspora as such. And this is in this context that I appreciate the commitment of Tatekulu Semnioma. I'm aware of two leaders remaining today who are very mindful of the necessity of including in the African identity and entity those who are spread across the globe. And they happen to be Semnioma of Namibia and Thabo Mbeki of South Africa. To this man, these two men, I remain so indebted because they keep reminding us that we are not complete, we are not adequate, we are not full without considering the plight of those, not only those who went before us to fight for us, but those who are still without home that they can call permanent across the diaspora. I therefore hope, Professor Taylor, that you will persist in reminding our leaders across the continent that Africa is not just the boundary, the land mass. Our unity encompasses our self-understanding, our self-awareness, our self-respect, our self-affirmation, and our self-direction. I urge from where I sit here in Germany that we think more seriously about how we can link up together, just as Kwame Nkrumah said in 1957, that our efforts economically, politically, and otherwise need to join together so that Africa retains the dignity that she once had. There's a friend of mine in Uganda who says, and I think he is right, it is now an undisputed fact that human life, human civilization that includes thinking and dreaming and innovating started in Africa. Human civilization started in Africa. No one argues that anymore. Therefore, if that is true, then the African people have an extra duty and obligation to help other human beings across the globe to behave more humanely. In simple terms, we are because others are, and others shall be because others have been before us. Prof. Taylor, Dr. Garvey in the United States, and other friends in Jamaica and across the islands, thank you very much for remembering that we were once one nation as Africans, and we deserve the right to consider ourselves as one people, now and forever. May God bless us.
Thank you, Professor Disho. And I believe Dr. Ngwari is around. While he's preparing to take the podium, I just want to say, when Professor Disho mentioned Professor Taylor, what he meant was that collective person representing the governments. So he was addressing that remark to the governments through the medium of this forum. And Dr. Disho is a Namibian, so he speaks with passion. And I want to thank him very much for his presentation. The other person who is about to come on is Dr. Elijah Ngure. Can you identify yourself, sir? Did you see him? I will move on until he comes. I'll ask.
He's here, Prof.
Okay. Please, please go ahead. You're muted.
He's signaling that he's locked out. He's mute. That he can't get it off mute. See if you can assist.
Can you
Yes,
go ahead? You have the floor, Dr.
But can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Go ahead.
I'm calling.
Please go ahead. Dr. Ngure, please go ahead. You're unmuted. Hello.
Yes, bro.
Go ahead. Go ahead and speak.
Okay, because I can't hear anything.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
I can go ahead?
Yes, go ahead, please. Please unmute yourself. You're still muted. Not unmute, then you can speak.
Oh, you can
Just
hear me,
speak
but
now.
I can't
Just
hear
speak
you.
now, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, and good evening, Prof, and good evening, fellow Africans, young and old, and I see my uncle there, Prof. Disho. Amoroke. I greet you all. Those of you who have logged on from the diaspora and those here on the continent. on this very important day, as we commemorate the birthday of one of Africa's best. We do so with humility from Namibia, and we do so because in our veins, the African blood flows. And in our minds reside the knowledge that although we have been scattered through the voyage of history, we are one people. I think Marcus Garvey would be proud of at least two events in 2021. One, he would have been smiling with pride that athletes of African descent, regardless their nationalities, made a sterling performance at the just ended Tokyo Olympic. And secondly, I think the peaceful transition of political power in the Republic of Zambia recently would have made him proud. In this respect, the African child everywhere can strike a chord of optimism and be hopeful to follow the footsteps and the great teachings of the late Marcus Garvey. Described as Negro Moses of his time, Garvey remains the Moses of our time. His ideas and legacy live on. His ideas of optimism for repatriation of Blacks back to Africa. He did so not only in theory, but also in practice. By establishing a Black Star Line, as we know, the fleet of ships, to facilitate trade and commerce between Africans throughout the Western Hemisphere and those here in the motherland. If he were alive today, there would probably be not only fleet of ships, maybe he could have been having fleet of aeroplanes too. In other words, he understood early on that political power without economic power is meaningless. Just like Professor Robert Hill of the University of California made clear once, and I quote, "The important psychological liberation from the bondage of racial inferiority that Garvey helped to break and that Bob Marley popularized with his song stands and must continue to stand as a living, breathing testament to the breadth and depth of the movement Garvey created and his lasting historical significance." Prof and fellow Africans, it is this historic significance that I believe brings us here today and to pay tribute to his legacy. It is this realization for which we must commend organizers of this event for having made this possible and for inviting us to share a moment or two in this gathering. My contribution, therefore, to this important discussion is that of optimism. After all, we are a people that have endured so much. In the belly of the earth, if we are to be compared, we could have been compared to a diamond that has undergone various stages of mining, but emerged resilient, rough, tough, and yet unbreakable, and glitter a stone valuable to all corners of the earth. Our people have been oppressed, beaten, lynched, sold, dumped at sea, but like the phoenix, we have risen from the ashes with an unstoppable speed and decisive determination for success, solidarity, and unity of the African people everywhere. In 2021, the words of Marcus Garvey are still reverberating in all corners of the world. He said, "Up, you mighty race, accomplish what you will." As we can recall that he organized over 5 million people during his time under the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And he did this in an era where there was no internet, cell phone, or computers. Today, we have all the advancement of technology on our side. Therefore, I believe these words can be achieved through the trinity of reparation, repatriation, and re-education. A historical injustice had been committed against the Africans. the scars of this injustice is ever protruding like a speck in the eyes of the world, none of us must belittle the demands for reparation. Let us use our political independence to speak freely and openly and demand reparation. Kwame Nkrumah once observed that seek ye first the kingdom of politics and everything else shall be added unto you, unquote. Yes, today we are free politically. We are in control of our political space. We are free to manage ourselves. And on a lighter note, maybe we are free to mismanage ourselves. But I can't help but think out loud. What if the late Marcus Garvey were to return? What is it that he would find on reparation or repatriation as an achievement? What are the questions he would likely ask? And what are the answers we would formulate to his inquiry? I think let's pause and reflect on this today and tomorrow, and maybe forever. I therefore, in summary and in closing, I submit as below. It is true, as it was indicated earlier, the African diaspora has a space in the African Union, and there is a division specifically dealing with matters of African diaspora. The African Union defines the African diaspora as, quote, people of African origin living outside the continent, irrespective of their citizenship and nationality, and who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and the building of the AU, and unquote. On paper, therefore, yes, African diaspora can call Africa their home, as per the AU definition above. In my view, repatriation should continue. It can also not be disputed that for centuries and for decades, many people of African descent have been repatriating to the motherland. W.E. Du Bois and many others have done so, but the challenges remain. Does an ordinary African in the diaspora, or if we take an example of Jamaica, have a right of citizenship to any member state of the AU by virtue of being an African of African descent? That's a question. At the minimum, maybe it is time that we begin on days like this to provide some kind of recommendations, so that my view is that if we have 50 African countries or more than 50 African countries, each one should commit annually to welcome 2 youth from the diaspora for cultural exchange. There are currently many in the African diaspora that have migrated to Africa, as I said earlier, a great number retracing their roots and ancestry. What is their experience once in Africa? Are they feeling more at home, or are they regarded as foreigners in their own continent? Each African country can have a Chinatown, but can it have a Jamaican town? And what would be the perception of those fellow Africans that would be found there? So I so submit then that we need to do more, especially on connecting with the Africans in the diaspora, but the ordinary Africans in the diaspora. Because would they ever find a place in the African village, in the African city? What if then the Marcus Garvey were to come? I therefore propose that AU establish a prestigious Marcus Garvey scholarship or fund or volunteer organization supported by African governments. Alternatively, as part of cultural connection to Africa, the diaspora and the continent could organize sporting events between the various African countries. Another option is for intensifying or intensification of twinning agreements of high schools in rural areas and the slums of African diaspora, or have annual festival. Africa, some say it is poor. I argue that if it were poor, 1884-85 Berlin Conference would not have taken place. So therefore, on this trinity we have spoken of, it is time that we give meaning to it. Whatever education we got before, we need a re-education to appreciate this fact. The fact of pride in being Black and of being African, regardless of where geographical location we are. Re-education means our knowledge of yesterday must guide us today in order to lay a strong foundation for tomorrow. Today we have Sierra Leone and Liberia. These are manifestations of Africans who return to the continent. It is possible and it must be possible. Let us walk the talk and let us run on the walk with action and yes, on that talk. Up, you mighty race, accomplish what you will, including reparation, repatriation, and re-education. And I think that is the legacy we owe to the late Marcus Garvey. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Elijah. We will take that recommendation and we will try to incorporate it in whatever is being proposed. We will now move to the next speaker, Dr. Maxine Clark. Dr. Maxine Clark, are you there? You have the floor, Dr. Maxine Clark. While we're waiting for Dr. Clark, the discussion that preceded yesterday with Professor Rupert Lewis and Stephen Golding, I would want them to be part of the discussion panel. So we're going to extend the time to give them also an opportunity to discuss some of the things that were said yesterday and today. So if Professor Lewis is there, we're going to ask him to join the panel with Bert Samuels and to have a broader discussion on the issues and to come up with some concrete proposals so that we can move forward. Is Dr. Clark there? Dr. Clark, are you there? Then we will move to Samir Buchanan and come back to Dr. Clark if she is arrived. Is the volume okay?
No, it's not.
Can be muted.
Prof Taylor.
It was only later in my young adulthood that I would grapple with the content of this book. And then this was a decade after that I would get through for more of a nuanced understanding today, thanks to the Jamaica Diaspora Magazine, the Council of Namibia Broadcasting Corporation, and the State Ministry.
Are you hearing the speaker? Just show your hands if you're not hearing.
We're not
Just
hearing.
show your hands if you're not hearing. Okay, then. No, you have to go back. Please proceed. Is it tape?
Social justice-driven healthcare organization. Like many of you, my first encounter with the figure of Marcus Garvey was in what some of us call grade school and what others of us call primary school. In these early years, I came to revere the militarily clad, sartorially astute leader and founder of the Black Star Line as a national hero. What I learned then was that this man, by pursuing his own purpose with a spirit of excellence, was a forerunner, an early member of what would over time reveal itself as a relay team of many characters who, through their own boldness, uniqueness, and excellence, put my little country of Jamaica on the map, colloquially speaking. It was only later in my young adult years that I would come to grapple with the content of his teachings. And then close to a decade after that, that I would even attempt to probe for more of a nuanced understanding of his character. Today, thanks to the Jamaica Diaspora Magazine, the Consulate of Namibia, the Namibia Broadcasting Corporation, and the Jamaica Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, I get to share a few reflections on this topic as part of today's celebration. The teachings of Marcus Garvey are deeply layered in Jamaican culture, with popular reggae recording artists reminding us to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery and repeating the Garveyan exhortation of Africa for Afrikaans. His vision of home spoke to the heart's cry of many and brought with it a message that was itself a double-sided coin. The message is one of radical rejection of the established order on one hand and radical acceptance of the other. The radical acceptance of self, of individual, of collective Blackness, the idea that Black people deserved more and better, made waves across oceans at the time that it was originally expounded and found resonance in the hearts of diasporic peoples of Jamaica and abroad. His teachings attempted to counter hate and oppression with love, upliftment, and a third way. While one could argue that Garvey may not have had the intellectual grounding of some of his most effective critics, what he did have was a voice that lifted the hearts of many, and lifted they were. In spite of his limitations, he held his own in a world where the common man needed an alternative, and to him, he presented that alternative. For displaced and trafficked Africans and their progeny, who were trapped in a single story for hundreds of years, much of that story written in blood and forged by the sweat of men and women who would neither eat the fruit of their labor nor reap the harvest of their own strength in societies whose benefits accrued to a class to which one could never purchase access, let alone acceptance. The common man of African descent readily responded to his message, which was ultimately one of hope and empowerment. In their struggle, his words made overlooked men and women feel worthy. In their erasure from history and from society, he made them feel seen. In their marginalization, he placed them in center stage, and not in a piecemeal or compartmentalized way. No, he did so by stitching together a broader discourse that was global in nature, and of which these same everyday people were a crucial part, but in which they had no voice. It was inside this bigger picture that he helped his people, broadly defined, to locate themselves, and more importantly, to see new visions for what life could be and for what they could become. What does this have to do with today? Well, in her TED Talk on the danger of a single story, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie states that to create a single story about a people, they have to be shown as one thing, and only one thing, over and over again. And that is what they will become. She notes that stereotypes develop in order to further the incomplete representation and reinforce the single story as the only story. Poignantly, she explains that furthermore, power is the ability to not only tell the story of a person, but to make that single story the definitive story of that person or of that people. Over 100 years before she would utter these words, and inspired by Booker T. Washington and others, Marcus Garvey sought to reclaim and recast the story of Blackness in the West. And not just for those who identified with the bourgeoisie, with the upper classes, no, but for those who were themselves the footstool of society while functioning as its engine. His was a literal quest of empowerment for the masses, for the least of these. And in undertaking this quest of identifying with the powerless and giving them a path to elevation, Garvey's message resonates not just among those of us who belong to the African diaspora, but also to diasporic peoples of all languages, origins, and cultures, longing.
Gentlemen and ladies, that was a contribution from Samir, who is a Jamaican. Somehow the videotape got stolen by half. But the message was very clear. And Samir, I didn't tell you, she is the Senior Director for Strategy and Innovation. Alta Medical Health Services in California. She is an educator, a doctor in education, and a PhD in strategic management. So she wanted to share her view on Garvey's role in the elevation of the Black masses. So I apologize for the break in transmission, but we have to include that in our discussion, the vision and the perspective that she posed in this video. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to now ask the panel to compose itself. And I've expanded the panel to include those that were deferred from yesterday, and those who have spoken today, including and Mr. Bert Samuels and Mr. Michael Barnett, to give them an opportunity to say a few words before they form themselves into the panel. So if Bert is here, I'll give you 4 minutes, and I'll give Michael 4 minutes, and then we will reassemble as part of the panel. So Bert, you have the floor. Mr. Bert Samuels is a noted advocate and Pan-Africanist in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, and is pretty much known for his views and his advocation. Go ahead, Bert.
I'm happy to be here. I don't think I've spoken on a panel with fellow African peoples before. I have traveled to Ghana on 2 occasions with my family. And getting straight to the point, that Africa at home and abroad, I recall in 2011, when I brought my family to Ghana, we had to seek visas in Jamaica, but on our arrival, the immigration officers were to say, you don't need a visa. That welcoming, which has now seen the president of Ghana lifting visa requirements for African Jamaicans, has been welcomed, and is in fulfillment of Garvey's dream that Africa for Africans at home and abroad. I have sought to join the reparation movement in Jamaica, and as deputy chair of the National Council on Reparation in Jamaica, I want Africans who are listening and those in the diaspora to know that Jamaica has its rightful place in the reparation struggle. We intend to file a petition before the Privy Council in England, seeking reparation, seeking declarations that the act of slavery was a crime against humanity. And we expect to get the full support of the diaspora and Africans on the mainland. We must remember at this time that Haiti has passed through a severe earthquake just this week, and that we should remember her and the punishment that France bestowed upon Haiti because she dared to seek independence in the most and the only successful slave revolt in history. We embrace the struggle of Haiti. We put aside and make sure that we do not have the misbelief that the practice of voodoo, which is an African religion, is responsible for Haiti's poverty. Haiti's poverty is directly related to the French who have celebrated rising up. For 2 centuries, the Haitian people have had to pay France reparation because of the lost planters, the French planters. Therefore, because of the suffering of they were taken there as enslaved people, taken to a fault line that is not present in Africa. So that suffering of our Haitian brothers must be recognized and be part of this discussion because of the poverty that has been bestowed upon Haiti by the French. Thank you for this opportunity, and I feel honored to be here on the day after Garvey's birthday to know that over a century after his teachings were given, it continues to be relevant and applicable to Africans at home and abroad. Thank you.
Bert, thank you. I will now call on Dr. Barnett. Dr. Barnett, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Greetings.
You have the floor, Dr. Barnett.
Okay, give thanks, and I'm glad to be here on this momentous occasion of us out here in the West, Africans in the West, discussing and and articulating the ways forward with our brothers and sisters on the continent. Now, I wish to bring the Rastafari perspective in terms of reparation and repatriation. And I should just say I'm also on the council for the National Council for Reparations here in Jamaica. But I want to make the point that Rastafari have, ever since their inception here in Jamaica in the early 30s, been champions of repatriation as part of the reparations package. And they've been champions of this just as Marcus Garvey was. And in many ways, Rastafari can be seen as the progenitors of Marcus Garvey's dream. Essentially, all mansions of Rastafari aspire for repatriation, I should say. And this is important because there are some differences in some contexts between the mansions, but one thing that they all share common vision on is repatriation to the continent, because they've seen how the involuntary forced push away from the continent, the involuntary migration of Africans due to the great African Holocaust, the Marfa, has actually not only robbed us of our language, our culture, and our original African religion, but it has also given an indelible stain on Africans in the West. And Rastafari have thoughtfully realized that to repair the psychic and mental, as the post-traumatic syndrome, post-slavery traumatic syndrome, one way of repairing this is through repatriation. And this is a very important consideration, and I'm glad that this is being considered in this discussion that we're having. And Garvey himself, just as Bert said, always shouted the mantra, Africa for Africans at home and abroad, so that us in the diaspora have a longing to connect with our African brothers on the continent, with our continental African brothers and sisters. And so Rastafari have long, as I said, championed the cause of repatriation. And in fact, with the EABIC, notably under the direction of the leadership of Prince Emmanuel, actually argued that repatriation should come before reparations. This is an interesting perspective, that Africans must first, upon reaching the continent, then receive the reparations for settlement, resettlement, and so forth. But I give thanks for being here on this great occasion, and I hope that a lot will come out of this discussion and reasoning that we're having on Marcus Garvey's dream and the Pan-Africanism that has been realized by Pan-African groups such as Rastafari and many other Pan-African movements across the globe. Give thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dr. Barnett. Thank you, Dr. Barnett. Now, is Miss Letitia Davis-Mattis, she has a choice of making a brief presentation before she starts the moderation of the panel discussion. Is Latis here? Latis is here. Can you identify yourself, Latis? Is that Ms. Letitia?
It's Lalita, Prof, and I don't believe
Ms.
she's
Lalita.
on Zoom. I don't think she's on the Zoom.
Okay, then, Stephen Golding, would you take 4 minutes to make a small contribution in place of Mr. Letitia?
Certainly, Prof. Let me apologize. I have to keep my camera off. I'm kind of in the field here, cleaning up after the storms yesterday. Give thanks for the invitation. Give thanks for the inspiration. I listened to some of the speakers earlier, and to my co-panelists from the National Council on Reparation. I just want to add that, you know, Pan-Africanism is perhaps the only good thing that came out of the transatlantic slave trade. And I say that because this concept of a unified race, of a common history, and therefore sharing a common destiny, which is the essence of Pan-Africanism. That was not born on the continent of Africa, but it was born in the bellies of the slave ships. And it is to the Africans who were taken, stolen, ripped away from their motherland, who then evolved to owe no allegiance to any particular tribe, nor to any particular nation as delineated by the Berlin Conference of 1884, because when Africans refer to themselves today as Nigerians or Namibians or Angolans, we must understand that this is a creation of the Berlin Conference, which follows along the lines of the borders that were drawn on the continent of Africa from a palace in Europe. So it is the Africans who were stolen away, who, owing no allegiance to nationality or tribal demarcations, conceptualize the philosophy that became known as Pan-Africanism. And this is further demonstrated by the fact that even before we speak of the Rastafarians and their push for reparations, repatriation, even before a Marcus Garvey, looking back to the shoulders that a Garvey stood on, when we look at people like Edward Wilmot Blyden, an African descendant from what is now the US Virgin Islands, who repatriated to Africa and became a stalwart, in fact, the father of the Pan-African movement. If we look at people like John Russwurm from Jamaica, who started the first Black-owned newspaper in the United States and then repatriated to Africa in the late 18th, early 19th century and became a statesman in Liberia. If we come even up to the Trinidadian, who called the first Pan-African Conference, Henry Sylvester Williams, who became one of the first Black lawyers in South Africa, who repatriated back to the continent and worked there. So this connection between the Africans in the diaspora and the Africans on the continent, and the evolution of Pan-Africanism, which was an element brought back to Africa from the Africans stolen from Africa, but is now such a necessary ingredient and such a vital program to ensure the advancement and further development of Africa. This is why we're talking about unity at the level of the AU. We live in a world that is practicing collective security, whether Europe for the Europeans or Asia for the Asiatics, as Garvey put it. We are still demanding Africa for the Africans in a way that is beneficial to us all, whether on the continent or not. So I just want us to keep that in mind as we deliberate, that we are not alone in our own sphere of work and organization and our fight for our rights as human beings and for our due justice as Africans and African descendants, right? And the ideal of Pan-Africanism demands that we take into consideration how our actions affect each other and that
I'm
we
going to
are
make
able to plan
one
together
other
collectively.
switch. And I recognize I'm putting all the views in one basket so that the discussants and the discussers can consider all those points of view as they go. So I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Muta Barika for 2 minutes. Muta. Okay. Muta Barika, can you identify yourself? Can you show your hand? Okay. I think he has left. Okay. So we're trying to get. Okay.
Morning,
Muta, are you there? Please take the floor. Unmute and take the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Hi, Prof. Neville Graham from Jamaica.
Yes. Okay, I cannot see Muta Bariko. Okay. Is Mr. Lisha? No. Okay. Now I'm going to give over the moderation to Mr. Is it Bert Samuels, to the National Council for Reparation, to conduct the panel discussion. Steve Golding, are you going to do it on behalf of the chairperson?
Are you hearing me good, Prof? I don't know if my connection was tripping out.
Yes, go ahead.
No, Bert is here. Bert and Dr. Barnett are the panelists. So I don't see Lalita online. So I will allow them to lead.
Okay. All right. So the panel is Bert Samuels and Michael Barnett. And I've asked Rupert Lewis. Is he around? Professor Lewis, to compose the panel, and it will be a discussion among them and between those who have presented today. It will be led by the panelists, but they will invite views from those who have spoken today on any issue that they consider. So I will pass the panel over to Mr. Bert Samuels. Mr. Bert Samuels.
Yes, I'm here. Okay. So the slide this matter made myself and Dr. Barnett the two panelists, but it has been rightly expanded. So may I know, Professor, who are the panelists at the moment?
We have suggested Professor Lewis. And Professor Lewis and Steve Golding. Just that there's no lady there, there's no gender. Dr. Clark, Dr. Samir Clark and Buchanan are unfortunately not present. So we'll have to do it the masculine way and speak on their behalf, which is something that I do not particularly admire. But for now, I'm trying to find, can the National Council suggest a female person?
I see Natisha Bohart Singh is online. I'm not sure if she's part of the tech team today, but she could be invited to participate.
If she's available, I would love to have her join the panel to give some sort of balance, uneven balance. Is she there? Can she identify herself?
Right here. I've been in and out having internet challenges from the start of the day. So that could be for me my only challenge, and that I've been multitasking. I haven't caught the first part because of these challenges, and so I might very well not be able to fully, lend off myself, but I'm not sure what it is I'm supposed to do. If you could just let me know. My apologies for all that has been happening from morning.
Okay, then I don't want to bring in the challenge of technology into this argument. So if you're not comfortable technology-wise, and I'm not going to repeat what was said earlier. So the panelists, feel free to include Ms. Bardasing, and please take the floor, Mr. Burt.
Okay, so as the banner said, so there are two issues for discussions. There's reparation and repatriation. And in fact, the CARICOM 10-point plan has incorporated one of the claims under reparation is repatriation. And it is obvious that this would have to be part of the plan for reparation because we were taken by way of human trafficking. The worst example of human trafficking in the history in recorded history was the 400 years transportation of Africans and who were brought to the West. And therefore,
can I make a stop? Can I just? We have 30 minutes for this session, so you have to plan on that. Thank you.
Oh, good. All right. So all right. So my introduction will go no longer than 2 more minutes. So that under this section of reparation and repatriation, I was encouraged by the very speaker whose name escaped when she advocated that land possession and the freedom of movement of persons from the diaspora in Africa without any restraint was one of the preconditions for the dream of Garvey for Africa for Africans. Now, if Africa for Africans is an extension of repatriation, in another way of expressing it, I'm happy to hear that the AU, the African Union, is being pressured and being asked to open the doors of its several countries so that persons in the diaspora would not need visas to come there, that we would be prepared to come and invest and to, as it were, voluntary repatriation continent. Added to that, repatriation being a claim for reparation means that the funding of the transportation and resettlement of the Africans who wish to go home must be part of the funds that must be paid for reparation by the European states. And therefore, this discussion, I think, should also make a call for the enslavers, that is the European countries, to make sure that part of what is paid out is the funding of taking us back home. That has been the long cry of Rastafari in Jamaica. And I would defer to my co-panelist, Dr. Barnett, to deal with that question at this time on the question of repatriation as it forms part of reparations to be paid, compensation to captured peoples who have been brought over here against their will. Dr. Barney.
Okay. Thank you, Bert. So on the issue of repatriation, as I said, Rastafari have long championed this issue, this aspect of reparations.
He's talking back again, you know, they're going back and forth.
Can you hear me? All right. So in light, what we realize is that, in fact, Rastafari have advocated in the advocacy for repatriation.
Yes, brother.
I want to bring up a couple of
you talk already, brother. Come on, let's talk.
Sorry, come again?
Yeah.
Well, can we just do this in an orderly, sorry, can we do this in an orderly fashion, because it should be just one person speaking.
Yeah,
and then
there are
all right, can you hear me now?
Yes,
all
brother.
Right, I was trying to follow up on what Bert Samuel said. And the issue of repatriation, as far as Rastafari is concerned, is central issue because Rastafari have not waited on, very importantly, have not waited on help or aid, economic aid through reparations to actually action repatriation. So the repatriation program has already started. Although having said that, Rastafari have argued that compensation is due because our ancestors were involuntarily ripped away from the continent. But I want to take the fact that there has been cases of Rastafari, so far as the British government is concerned, being addressed frontally. There was a landmark lawsuit case brought by Ras Miguel Lawn, and which Bert Samuels was a part of, 2002, very importantly. This was the golden jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II, 50 years after being on the throne of England, she came to Jamaica. And on that trip, she was served a lawsuit by Ras Miguel Lawn and other members of the Nyabingi Theocracy Reign Order in Jamaica. Unfortunately, nothing really came of the lawsuit, but Bert was a part of the court, the legal dialogue between the Rastafari movement and the Crown. So he can actually speak in detail on that. But not only that, but you had also the landmark case of Fillmore Alvaranga and Dougie Mack, who traveled to Ethiopia on 2 fact-finding missions to Africa. One was in '61. It was Fillmore Alvaranga, it was Dougie Mack, and actually Mortimer Planner on that first trip. Now, Fillmore Alvaranga, Dougie Mack took the initiative to write a letter to the Queen of England and to the Prime Minister, asking for compensation for the involuntary removal of Africans from the continent. That was in '61. Then on the second trip, they were also part of the fact-finding mission on the second trip, but this time with Sam Clayton. So it was Fillmore Alvaranga, Sam Clayton. '63, they wrote another letter to the Queen asking for due consideration of compensation for the Great Marfa, the African Holocaust. That nothing came of that one. But what I'm saying this in light of the fact that there have been attempts by Rastafari long before the Reparations Council came into fruition in Jamaica. By the way, the National Council of Reparation came into effect in 2009, just for the record. So Rastafari have been championing this case of repatriation and reparations, and they see the two inextricably linked. Now, at the same time, Rastafari aren't saying that that everybody should repatriate, but certainly those who seek to repatriate should be given the amenities and given the resources to do so, because, you know, if you go there with nothing, obviously it's going to be very hard to start. So it's not just a matter of your plane ticket or your boat taking a ship over there, but you need something to start with when you reach the continent. So that's due consideration. And on top of that, we also need to consider that when we get to the continent, and this issue was raised, and I want to emphasize it, citizenship. So it's not just freedom of movement, but part of that is citizenship. So we've seen in Ethiopia, we've seen some games where some Rastafari brethren and sisters have been given resident status, but that's still not enough. We need citizenship status. So the recognition by African brothers and sisters on the continent that we aren't strangers, right? We aren't tourists, that we are coming home. So part of the whole repatriation project is that we should be embraced as fellow African brothers and sisters in the truest sense. So I'm saying this to my brothers and sisters on the continent, that they need to consider this, that we need to integrate as much as we can. So not just opening up the borders between the African nations themselves for continental Africans to move back and forth. That's one part of it, but also recognizing those of us in the diaspora as fellow African brothers and sisters, and therefore granting citizenship rights. And also, as was very well mentioned by Brother Steve Golding yesterday, that so far as the AU proceedings are concerned, we are also looking for voting rights. We're looking for full participation in AU meetings, so not just observer status, but full participation.
That in this repatriatory justice package, we have to hold the Europeans accountable. We have to understand that it is their job to give us this reparation we seek and to bear the brunt of this resettlement that we seek. So I align my thoughts with the CARICOM 10-point plan and the revised version to say we are demanding a fully funded resettlement program that allows for the repatriation that Marcus Garvey talked about, that Rastafari talk about. We are asking for what is due, what is of legal right. We're not having a conversation with African nations in what we call in law about Committee of Nations, which is to basically entertain us. We're saying we identify as being from Africa, as descendants belonging also to a 6th region as the AU identifies us to be. And we are looking as a part of a 10-point repatriatory justice package for repatriation, which is also a right. I will hold at for questions.
Greetings, sister. You hearing me? Everyone hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah. This is Dwayne Adams D-Med speaking, everyone.
Correct up.
Yeah. All right. So I'm saying
on this question, Bert, okay, Bert, there are some issues that you need to invite.
Greetings, everyone. Is Dwayne Adams allowed to speak? D-Med.
Not yet, sir.
Okay.
Bert, there are some questions and issues that you will need to invite comments from the continent itself.
Bert has spoken already, you know.
No.
Mr. Adams.
Yes, sister. Yes, sister.
Right. I'm sure that we're of one accord, but you can see how really disruptive this is. So we can, I'm assuming we will take your questions, but just allow the moderator to bring some order to the space. You know, we are one. So let's just try and behave as one.
Okay, thank you for that assistance. We have in this forum some people from the continent that you need to get some reaction from them to some of the issues that are raised. And let me say, this forum is not going to solve that problem, but it should start a process. And I want to just use the example of Namibia. One of the things that emerged is that consensus is very important before you go to negotiation, internal consensus. And if we don't have that, you're going to go and you're going to be in trouble to get any sort of compensation that is acceptable to the masses who are the victims. So it's important that we get some views from Namibia. As I mentioned earlier, they have taken the leap in this area, and there are lessons that they can give. But we're not going to get
more clarification, Mr.
enough
Speaker.
time to look at all the issues, land, governance, and so on. But it should start. It should inspire you to start to engage in a consensus. And remember now, the African diaspora is not just Jamaica. It's all over the world. So there must be some mechanism to get that consensus building process going, so that when you start with reparation and repatriation, you will have some at least acceptable consensus. Okay, so back to you, Bert.
Hi, am I being heard?
I have 20 minutes to wrap up that section. This section now.
Everyone, this is the way that I'm going to leave right now. Okay, so have a good day, everyone. Okay. Yeah, D-Man, it's the way that I'm going to be leaving.
Have a good day.
Thank you, find the link.
Nice intervention, Boda Singh.
Blessings, Ras Rankai.
Bless. I would like to make an intervention also too.
I'm sorry, I lost the ability to speak. I'm back on. I'm sorry, Dr. Barnett and myself are. Yes, so
Samuels, it's saying your bandwidth is low, Mr. Samuels. So I'm not sure if you're.
The job is
go ahead.
His video.
Right.
We were not hearing him.
Am I being heard? Am I being heard?
Patchy.
Wow.
Maybe if it turns off his camera, because
yes,
that's
definitely. That's what he has to do.
No, I'm seeing my camera is on and my vocals on. Am I being heard? I was.
No, we're saying maybe you should turn off your camera for a while, because your bandwidth is low.
Precisely.
Oh, turn.
Please go ahead. The time is running out.
Shut your mouth, boy. Anyhow.
I'm asking for participants out of mainland Africa to respond to our reparation discussion. So far, 4 hours from Jamaica. We want to hear what is the view of the mainland African brothers and sisters or desire to return.
I see Ambassador Jasmine has her hand up. I don't know if it's for a while.
Okay, so we have Ambassador Jasmine, we have Evelyn Chilamba, and we have Garvey, and we have who could enter some sort of response, and Professor Dijo.
Okay, there's a hand. I'm seeing a hand. There's a hand risen. Go ahead with the hand. Who is it? Who is to let that hand in?
That's my hand, Bert. Ambassador Jasmine.
Go ahead, Ambassador. I'm hearing you loud and clear on repatriation.
Okay. I reside in Ethiopia. I repatriated 21 years ago to Shashamane. The difference being with a lot of the other parts of the African continent is that due to the fact that the people of the African descent had come to fight off the Italians in the 1930s, the land was given as a gift. So people are returning and settling. In fact, the community, Jamaica and the other islands, have been here for over 70 years. We have been able to set up certain things and get certain types of IDs. But what I've learned from being here, the repatriation needs to be organized better. Needs to be organized in a sense of being in convert with the governments of each country, in saying, what do we want? What land, how much land do we need? And, how much land, what do we want it for? Like schools, houses, and so on. Because not everybody wants to go to Ethiopia, and not everybody wants to go to Ghana. So some communication needs to be going on with the governments of the countries. Surveys need to go out to the people, not just the Rastafari community. Obviously, we've been doing it for years, but survey need to go out to the people. Do you want to repatriate? Where do you want to repatriate? When? So we have some package of what people really want and where they want to go that we can negotiate with those countries and say how many people want to come there. We are here in Ethiopia, and obviously 70 years, the people have been through a lot. They've been through a change from the king, from Emperor Haile Selassie to the Melis regime, and then now, to Mengistu, and from Mengistu to Melis, and now we're with Abiy. And we're seeing the situation that the colonials are coming again. And one of the things that can help, if there's more from the diaspora here and the continent, not just in Ethiopia, Tanzania, Mozambique. In fact, there are repatriatees in those areas. They're just living their lives. But I think that the masses around the globe, some form of survey needs to be done to see where people want to go and when. That those communication is made with the governments of those countries to say, we have 5,000 people that wants to settle in Namibia or in Tanzania. And this is what we require, and this is how much land we will require for that. Something must be done. We cannot imagine repatriation without doing nothing towards it. And I do support, from my experience here, because we haven't even touched on the sub-Sahara slave trade yet. We're working on the transatlantic. I do support that, I do support that the repatriation comes before the reparations, because we have extra support of those African governments and those African people on the continent who has also suffered because of the transatlantic, because of the slave trade. That's my little part. Thank you.
That becomes very interesting. So it seems to be two components in repatriation, and I need my brother to come in on this, because is it that firstly, as Natisia Boradasing has said, that funding for the repatriation must be by the enslavers, but also the opening of the door and the granting of citizenship belongs to those in Africa. through the AU. So what's the view on that? And I see a raised hand. I don't know whose hand it is. Then we have a response to that.
Are you talking to me, Bert Samuels?
No, he's saying that he see other hand raised. I think there's Junior and Dr. Akechi.
Dr. Ikishi Agbukba.
And Rastafari Kingdom has the hand up.
Yeah.
And then I want to clarify a few things.
Yeah, good evening, good night,
Good
good
evening,
morning.
Dr. Akechi.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be in your midst, even though I'm very busy with academic and research work. But I want to say something. I was very impressed with what Ambassador Jasmine said, and I also want to support every move that will bring about unity, that will bring about building of lives, building of minds, building of systems for more inclusive, for more inclusiveness or more inclusivity. And I very much welcome you guys. I'm in Africa now. I'm in Nigeria, and I have also lived in South Africa. And Africa is very is yearning for you to visit you. There are still nice and kind people in Africa. Africa is not totally poor as the media has been painting Africa. And I have traveled around the world, and I can tell you that if you have a yearning to come to Africa, you can just identify with an African country. And we can also, from the diaspora group, and give you some stronger links to have a place that you call that, because we are all one. We have the same color. I'm seeing people that look like my relatives. I'm seeing people that look like me around, and this is very interesting. That all around the world, we find our people contributing to transformation in one respect or the other. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that contribution, Don. Dr. Barnett, you need to help me here. What about His Majesty saying we should organize and centralize? The organization of the repatriation must respectfully go through who will bear the burden on the resettlement. Because, as Natisa has said, and I repeat, those who took us out must be made to resettle us. What's your view, Dr. Barnett, or any other member?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely I concur that it was the European colonial powers that basically involuntarily ripped us away from the continent, so they should play a major role in our resettlement. I am of that viewpoint. I know many Rastafari are of that viewpoint as well, because if we went voluntarily, which of course wasn't the case, then the case would be different. But we ended up here in the West, not of our own accord, but and we obviously have benefited all the major European powers with the labor of our ancestors has benefited them extremely well. So, as part of the reparation, the repair, those who wish to return, to reconnect, with their ancestry, their ancestral origins, it's only reasonable that they should compensate us for that. So I think we could hear from maybe a couple of the Rastafari proponents here. I know Rastafari Kingdom and Ras Frankai was.
And Ras Frankai has been trying to speak for a little while.
Let's hear from Ras Frankai and then maybe Rastafari Kingdom after that and get their perspective on right?
Yes, giving thanks, my fellow Africans. And I'm truly honored to be on a panel such as this, discussing the important question of reparations within the context of repatriation. I would just like to mention, in paying homage to the great Honorable Marcus Garvey, that his son, Dr. Julius, on 2 occasions mentioned at the CARICOM conference here in 2014, the second conference on reparations that was held regionally, that the Rastafari perspective must be taken into account. He further reiterated that at an IDPAD conference and convention in Guyana in 2018, when he pointed out quite clearly to the reparationists and the repatriationists that it is the Rastafari bandwagon that ones are now jumping onto. I would just like to say further, though, into looking at the Rastafari perspective, that repatriation is not only a return to, in a physical sense, to the continent, but a return to the ancient African values, the cultural continuity that John Henry Clark speaks about, the revolutionary consciousness that was embedded from the Maroons and coming right through, and putting Marcus, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah, within that spectrum, within that continuum of revolutionary cultural African consciousness. So that I think we have to also be looking at repatriation in this sense. And also the other point that I would like to reiterate here is the need to incorporate the countries in Africa who have been a little bit, two-sided in their whole question, even giving due respects to Akufo-Addo in Ghana and the year of return, etc. But I think that all these African countries, if they want to make repatriation meaningful, must include within their foreign ministries or within separate aspects within their governance then, ministries of repatriation to look after the whole question of repatriation and all that it would entail. Not only citizenship, granting of land, learning the culture, learning the languages, etc., which has to be a part, as the ambassador said, it has to be better organized. And I think this is a way that we can go towards such. I also like to say that we must also include and incorporate some of the institutions in the diaspora that have been mooted and some have been started to be initiated. I refer here to the State of the African Diaspora, SOAD. I refer also to the so-called 6th region of the African Parliament or of the African nation. And in reference to and in homage to Ambassador Arikana Chikombori Kwao, the African Diaspora Development Institute. And I think that we have to now look at these things in concrete senses, differentiating between migration and repatriation and making certain initiatives to give a meaningful reality to these concepts. Thank you very much for the intervention.
Blessings.
Thank you, Frankie.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well,
really appreciate it.
I'm not sure. Oh, yes, Rastafari Kingdom is up. And after that, I want to make my final intervention.
Give thanks, respect Dr. Barnett, Mr. Burt, Ambassador, each and everyone, respect. But I'm saying now, I'm in South Africa as one of the main elect of record for the Rastafarian movement as a secretary. So what we see now is that we have a bilateral happening between South Africa and Jamaica, and that could provide a good platform to make that government-to-government link. That bilateral is still effective. But the funny thing is, during that bilateral, I was the representative of the Rastafari community in Jamaica, and I would here like to follow up on those things. But in one of the gathering of the bilateral, we realized that this should really be a trilateral, because we have the Sovereign Maroon initiative. You see, it gives this reparation a different tone. That old norm of doing things is like coming to an end, where we have to approach things from a sovereign aspect. You see, and this is why it comes now to reparation, to repair the damage, which is the first damage that was done was to Africa. So first, before the Berlin Conference, We have to restructure our form of governance through the king and the kingdoms. And through that now we bring through our sovereign currency that we can develop as a government, which is the Maroon sovereign government representing the 6th region, you see. So with this aspect now, this is why this South Africa-Jamaica bilateral should really be a trilateral, bringing in the 6th eco region led through because the AU already established the headquarters for the 6th region in Maroon up in a compound. So following all these protocols, it's easy if my beloved comrade, Michael Barnett, and the necessary races in Jamaica, because 2000, I know I might exceed my time, but if I can give another minute, I would like to make reference to 2005 when the AU came to Jamaica. Then 2 months later, they came in a summit led by South Africa. Professor Rupert was there. This was in April 2005, after they were at this, the AU was there March 2005 also. Well, in this summit, the South African Minister of Minerals was presenting the case to the university, Professor Rupert, that Africa is ready to assist the diaspora. To that momentum from South Africa to Jamaica was that the university was like semi-literate to what Africa had intended for I&I, which is the Rastafarian movement, been spearheading these things. So at that point, it was said that Professor Gutsmoor would gather the Rastafari community to have a head-on-head dialogue with the South African government so as to address this kind of a revolutionary movement that needs to take place in establish what is called preparation for repatriation, which is building these gated cities. So the government, the Honorable Babsy Grange, and these things were already on their table that they should participate. So they should engage the South African government because give thanks, my Honorable, give thanks, blessed.
Yes, I think I just want to make a few points coming out of the discussion. Russ Frankai mentioned the collaboration between Ghana and that is very, very important. Something that mute Russ Frankai. Yes. So mention the cooperation between Ghana, and it's very important to have the continental stakeholders involved because of some of the points that I've mentioned. You have issues of nationality and sovereignty in their own region, and we've been exploring some of these things. So for example, when you speak to ambassadors and you want to have conversations with them, they will point to what is already set up in their own country. So I know, for example, Ghana, they have a whole international cooperation department, which really deals with the diasporal issue. I'm using the opportunity to implore other African nations to put things in place on the continent so that you can be a part of it. It's not just a one-sided thing, that the Caribbean countries or the descendants, the lands where the descendants of people from continental Africa are found must also include in their package a thrust towards repatriation. But there is the other side. We do not find that there are the outlook that we have here, it's not replicated in some of the countries on the continent. And we do understand that we are scattered, we're from different regions, and some of the countries will tell you on the continent that we were not participants in slavery. These are facts that we have to come to grips with. It cannot be homogeneous. where we say, yes, we are going back and we want to be repatriated and we want reparation. But these are some of the kinks that we're going to have to work out. I know for a fact that CARICOM has already reached out to some of the countries on the continent, and the whole repatriation package, which is very important to all of us, is being worked out. But we need all the people on that side, the continent, and on this side to be of one accord. I also want to make a point about the fact that we need to capitalize on what's happening in the moment. There is the International Decade for People of African Descent that we have been holding all our webinars under. We've been hearing about all over the world. But I don't think us as people of African descent are also fully capitalizing on what it can do for us as a people. We heard just recently the UN High Commission on Human Rights finally put reparation on the table, something that Jamaica has been working on from 2009 and other Caribbean countries. We're finally getting the support that we need on the international side of things. I'm saying we need to come together as a people and take advantage. There's also the UN Permanent Forum for People of African Descent that is just set up. My group and I, other UN fellows and myself, we've been lobbying for this group to be set up. We've written submissions, we've been doing the groundwork. What I want is for us, as Professor Taylor is imploring us, to come out of these webinars from now until Friday and to make these resolutions that will really effect change. It matters not how many forums we're going to be having. I can tell you, because I'm thrown into the international work of trying to make sure that we have a permanent forum like what the indigenous population has, and they can bring their issues to that permanent forum and get it done. We as people of African descent finally is going to have our own permanent forum. We need international people from the continent to help us lobby these groups so that we can get reparation and included in reparation, repatriation. Those are my 2 cents.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Barnett has been locked out for technical reasons. Any other contributors to the discussion? I just want to make it clear that at the time Jamaica was given independence by the British in 1962, Rastafari did say, do not take independence until repatriation was satisfied. And what they had the foresight in seeing, that Rastafari realized that the British were trying to use independence to take away from their responsibility to resettle those who want to resettle in Africa. And they felt that they were giving us independence so we would take our own, as it were, our destiny in our own hands, not knowing that we were tricked by them giving up. The whole question of flag and independence. So any views on that, about independence without reparation, independence without repatriation, any views?
You're muted.
Bert,
yes.
This is an opportunity to get some views from the African who are indigenous Africans, to get some response. We don't want to be regurgitating the same issues that we know about. Those have been well articulated. We're trying to get new issues and approaches, and to test, run them with the Africans who you will have to receive you. So try to get some new issues and new approaches, not those that we already know and we have been really documented. All right, so it's an opportunity to get some views direct.
Hear you. So any concerns that we in the diaspora may not have, are not able to see, we are not taking into account? Any concerns from the homeland people regarding these 2 issues, reparation and repatriation? What are your views on it?
Who is in charge?
Yes, go ahead, sister. Yes, go ahead.
Have you given me the floor?
You have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you.
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate the views expressed earlier. However, I would like to add that when we talk about the African diaspora being the 6th region of the AU, we should embrace that as a way to empower us to talk as one voice in order to demand whatever that is due to us. The African in diaspora and the African on the continent, we all want the same thing. Damage has been done on the African continent, and it has been done to those who were stolen away. So we should focus on getting that, as I stated earlier, the AU should or must finalize whatever that is need to be done to ensure that the African in the diaspora have a seat at the table and they are represented fully. Not just on paper to say, yes, we recognize you as the seats, but we must bring that to materialize so that we can clearly and fully demand what is ever is owed to the Africans. Because if we should try to do as Jamaica is doing, demanding their reparation from Britain and then the others from Spain and the others from France, as I said earlier, when we negotiate with these united kingdoms as a small island, we are already at a disadvantage. But when we do it as a united Africa, then indeed we will get better results. Thank you.
Very well.
Mr. Samuels.
Yes, go ahead.
Can I just say something here?
Yes, sister,
I think we
go
are
ahead.
forgetting, thank you. When the OAU was set up in May 1965, also the Reparations Committee was set up. That reparations for the reparations and the artifacts was also set up. And the headquarters for the Reparations Committee was in Nigeria, headed by Abiola. Abiola did go through some cases in the United Kingdom in the early 70s, 80s, and 90s to get reparations. And that was a struggle because a lot of the African countries were afraid that because maybe their families were involved and, but eventually it did go through. That committee broke down. And then in the 2002 Durban conference, the committee was reminded, there was a reminder that there was a committee. Now that committee again is gone quiet. You understand? So there has been things set up from Kwame Nkrumah, Haile Selassie, and the OAU founding fathers and the continent to push for the reparations. And this is what's happened, is that it just gets pushed aside and not dealt with. So all is running around trying to find solutions. We need to go back to that policy that was set out by the founding fathers. I'm not saying everyone must go in that direction. A committee needs to go in that direction while the others pursue and work with the African continent. Ethiopia is desperately calling for the African descendants to come home. Over the last few weeks, they have called for the musicians, because of the propaganda that's going on, and even amongst ourselves. I mean, I live here, as I say, as a Rastafarian, but I've been outside and I see what's going on outside. Propaganda and struggles make people forget the destiny that they were on, as in repatriation. And the propaganda of what's going on in Africa, as if Africa is a tiny place, frightens people so that they are double-minded as to what they want. And I am hearing it in some aspect here. They're unsure, where do we go? Oh, because Ghana had called. The welcome home and people going home to their own places was not only us, It's the Iranians and those diaspora that was outside was to come back into their land. That's what the whole return home was about. Return, and you saw after some return home, boom, the changes. And the changes that we're seeing today with pandemic and things is going to get worse. So I do think that maybe what needs to happen, an international committee needs to be set up to actually deal with repatriation, to write those letters to those governments and do some proposals of how this can be done. Or a lot of people is going to die off in the West. And then we're going to say, boy, we should have done this or we should have done that. The unity is of great importance. Whether you're Rastafarian, Pentecostal, Muslim, we have to find ways to unite and deal with these issues. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks.
Bert, we have the issue was raised about Nigeria. We have a Nigerian former Minister of Foreign Affairs. If he's still here, Ambassador Hersey, we could invite his view on what has been said. Is Ambassador Hersey there?
Yes, Prof.
Are you
Can
comfortable
hear
to
me?
speak?
Very much so, Prof.
Bert,
Yeah.
can I invite him to give some response there?
I definitely would invite that. Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Nigeria. He accepted the offer to speak. Where is he? Speak.
Network issues.
Can you identify yourself by showing your hand so we can unmute you? Okay. Yes. Unmute yourself, Ambassador.
Hello? Oh. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, man,
Yes.
go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can hear
I'm
you.
Go ahead. We have 5 minutes left.
He's muted himself again.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Yes, we are hearing you. We are hearing you.
Continue.
Yes, I say, I have been a bit worried about the references being made on Ghana, except this last lady in white scarf who made a very good reference to Nigeria. Are you saying that when the repatriation takes place, are you saying all the Africans in the diaspora originate from Ghana?
Not at all. It's just that Ghana has come here 2 years ago and has lifted visa requirements. So I guess that's why we're talking so much about Ghana.
And more so,
okay.
Yeah, and more so too that we've had further conversations. I remember our first webinar, Deputy Chair of the NCR, Samuels, our first conversation that we had in the series was with Ghana and the High Commissioner, in which he laid out his thoughts on reparation, repatriation, and the way forward we try to engage. So that was the basis of the Ghana. And recently we would have had conversations with South Africa. Again, I believe it's the countries who come to the fore and reach out, and we reach out, that we're having discussions about. We're not singling out any one African country, really.
Okay.
In fact, our ancestor DNA out of Jamaica, most African Jamaicans are showing a stronger.
Fine, come in again if you don't mind. Again?
Go ahead, Nigeria.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
We're hearing you.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I have connection problems. Now look, repatriation, Africa, I have said it, and I made my own little input into this conversation. I think it was recorded and sent to Professor Twelo that Africa must be united. Africa must be united. We have a lot of problems in Africa, quite honestly. And this is where AU has to come in and get all these problems sorted out. Instead of going to Addis Ababa and talking. We have a lot of problems in Africa. And a lot of this is based on the fact that we have leadership successions in Africa, in most African countries. I don't know whether Prof has played my clip to this forum, but we need to get our problems sorted out in Africa. And some of the problems as we are facing today, like my country, Nigeria, and most other African countries in the West African region, we have people who are moving into the diaspora, talented people, because of the local problems that we have in our African countries. We have to get all this sorted out. I've said this in various fora during AU conferences when I was a minister in charge of African integration in Nigeria. We have to get all this sorted out. And AU has to sit up and get all these problems sorted out in most of our individual countries. I think on that note, maybe I'll come in again in the course of the progression of this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As I say, Dr. Barnett, who should be partnering with me, has been locked out for technical reasoning. Any other contributors?
You've got Bongo Gee's hands up.
We need to be closing down now, so limit the number to one, maximum two. Before we close.
Yeah, there is a hand up in the box.
Bongo Greece.
Yes,
And Mahat Kiru. I'm not sure if that person spoke already, but
yeah, greetings. Greetings.
Greetings.
Greetings to the panel, Bongo Greece, from the Assistant Chair, the All Mansions of Rastafarian, Trinidad and Tobago. In listening to the discussion for the last hour or so, very interesting, very edifying. However, on the terms of repatriatory justice, I would say as we continue celebrating the Year of the People of African Descent, I think one of the essential mediums in moving forward in terms of reparation and repatriation as Rastafari is that we first have to start that repatriatory justice on the ground among ourselves. As a people, when last had we had a common market where all African people in our community or in our country could come together and feel the self-worth and value of themselves. They must, repatriatory justice and reparation must start on the ground. The conversation has to on the ground. The people has to get that essence of what is happening, since all of nature is interrelated. I agree with the ambassador where certain institution has to be set up on the continent, right? Where people on the continent can visit people in the 6th region through different mediums of culture to better understand languages, and people see that you look like I look like I, we both have something in common where we has an origin, and understand where we are interrelated as a people. This would give us a stronger view, a stronger courage, and a stronger will in the African continent moving forward for repatriation. And our people in the region here will be much more welcome, knowing that I've met my brother and sister, in reality, that we can go forward with a much better strength. These are some of the conversations has to take place because reparation is beyond monetary systems. It has to do with racism, discrimination, and oppression, apart from all that we are going through in modern times today. Today, when we look at our business, see who are all the wholesalers at the country. We still acquire meager percent. You know, we have to start the process on the ground among the people in order with the conversation that it can move forward, you know, in terms of real reparation and reparatory justice. I give thanks.
Well said, great contribution. Any other final participant?
Yeah, Matt Carew, I think someone mentioned my name. Aya Congo, to the chair.
There's a hand. Whose hand is it?
Someone mentioned Matt Carew. Aya Congo, Matt Carew.
Go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
Yes, give thanks for the panel here that we are discussing such important, you know, aspects of I liberation as a people. I would like to draw our attention forward to the concentric circle, chief of all Ndinkra symbols that deal with circles within circles in order to achieve what we need. I agree with the brethren, the Adrian Bongo, I think it's Greece that just spoke on the fact that we need to be on the ground, educated about what this is about, because while we have so much
Is he muted?
His bandwidth is low.
Okay,
Yes,
I
and
think
maybe we're out of time, Professor Taylor.
I think that's the signal we are getting.
Right.
For
that we
ends,
have
far ends, that my
finished
knowledge of
our
what's
time.
going on with this.
And I apologize to Ikongo, Matt, but we have run out of time. Let me just say the discussion here is not complete. It needs to be a continuing discussion towards consensus. And the idea here is not to solve the problem, but to get new issues so that we can ponder a more feasible solution to what we have on the agenda. I will just pass the forum back to Bert for him to summarize briefly before we finally close.
Yes, I mean, this gathering has been well resourced. I thank all the participants at home and abroad. We thank you for recognizing the role that Jamaica has played, and Jamaica has given a son in the name of Mosiah Garvey to the world. We so appreciate the work of Garvey. We appreciate Nkrumah's embracement of Garveyism and Garveyism throughout Africa, which has made us so proud. For us to build on the words of Mosiah Garvey, which is over a century old now, is our challenge, and we are able to fit so much of what we're doing into Garvey's foresight and Garvey's teachings. I thank all of us here. We thank for Namibia's contribution and helping to arrange this discussion. We thank for the link between home and the diaspora, Sister Natisia, who came in at late notice, and all the participants, the sister out of Ethiopia, thanks for that link, for that perspective. You've been there 20 years, I think you said. We thank you for that perspective. And we give thanks for His Majesty.
I think we...
Yes. So let me thank all of you for being respectful of the time and for expressing freely
Thank
your
you.
views. Let us continue towards consensus, national and international, so that we have a common message. You do not want to bring disunity into disunity. So what the ambassador says, they need to tidy up the house. We need to ready ourselves to play an effective, functional brotherhood or sisterhood state. And so I want to thank all of you for speaking and giving us your views. And the dialogue continues tomorrow with a different theme. We're going to look at the state of the African diaspora, the sixth region. So the discussion is also relevant to inform that discourse. So once again, let me thank all of you and wish you a good night wherever you are, or safe travel wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank
you. See you all tomorrow.
Yes, definitely.
No,
Copy.
that's not my phone. This one. This, I mean, that's my phone is not. But I'm saying you say your phone is empty. So okay. When? My phone is dead. Yes. So
those at home like me.
Are you sure?
Those
before not no.
again.
You. But you say your phone
I
is
feel dedicated to tell you
today. Today, but this is for me. Why would I ask for a child if I know? That's it. I never gave them to be.
The ends that you serve that are selfish will
dead
take you no further than yourself.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But the ends that you serve that are for
My
all
phone is not dead
will
because
take you into eternity.
the black skin is not the badge of shame, but rather a glorious symbol of greatness.
Black folks, teach your children that they are direct descendants of greatness, the greatest and proudest race to ever people the earth. And it is because of the fear of our return to a civilization that might outshine others.
Who is there? Is anybody listening?
What's that, Aldona?
Laugh at opposition.
How much?
Real men smile.
Okay. 30.
When enemies appear. Africa has become the biggest game of the nation hunters. Today, Africa looms as the greatest commercial, industrial, and political prize in the world. Never forget, intelligence.
You even forgot about your video.
No,
because you're busy fighting me.
Carries the bed.
Because it's not you're busy fighting me.
Remove yourself as far as possible from ignorance and seek as far as possible to be intelligent.
If you haven't confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated into the race of life.
all. Oh no, we want our skin to be soft and nice and pretty and glowing. So you have to use the proper soap. Some people don't use soap. You might be saying, sir, you must be joking. No, some people don't use soap. They use body wash. You thought I was going to say something different. They use body wash. Why? Because it may be easier for them to use and easier for them to wash off. For some, it's harder to wash off. But you must ensure that you're either using soap or you're using body wash to wash off the germs and the sweat of your body. Because you sweat each day now. Yes, some of you might be sweating even now. Wipe your face. Yeah? Because when you sweat, it is normal. And it is normal for your sweat to have odors, right? Because of what your sweat is mixing with the bacteria will give a smell. And that's why we encourage you to bathe. That's why we all must bathe. We all must bathe properly and use a rag. Yes, what are some of the things that we use when we bathe? Tell me. Rag, that is correct. You use soap, that is correct also. What else? You must ensure that you, tell me, have a towel for when you come out of the shower, you dry off because you don't want to shake yourself. Oh no, you don't want to shake yourself at all. You want to ensure that you have a towel. Yes, you need that towel to bathe properly, right? Yes, ma'am. And it is important for a person to bathe at least 2 times per day. How many times per day we must bathe, boys and girls? At least 2 times per day. Yes, you must bathe in the morning and you must bathe before you go to bed. Now, last year when I was teaching my students hygiene, one of my students said to me, sir, I bathe 3 times per day. And I said, really? I said, yes, I bathe before I come to school. I bathe when I left school. And I bathe before going to bed. And I said to her, that is wonderful. Some people bathe 3 times per day. And that is okay. That is normal to bathe 3 times per day, boys and girls. All right. Now, I have an activity for you that I'll be sharing with you soon. Let me just go ahead and tell you that there are some common skin problems that we must try to avoid. Common skin problems like body odor. Now, I said it earlier that we all sweat, right? Some people say, I don't sweat. Yeah, I'm always cool and I'm always nice. And I don't sweat like other people sweat. Well, if that is you and you don't sweat a lot, kudos to you. Awesome, right? But some of us, we do sweat. We do sweat, and we have to ensure that we don't let everybody see this or smell us rather. Perspiration, another big word. Perspiration does not smell, right? But a mixture of sweat and bacteria can cause a foul odor. So your sweat alone doesn't smell, but when it's mixed with bacteria, it can cause a foul odor, and we don't want that, right? Now, body odor usually caused by poor hygiene. What do I mean by poor hygiene? I mean, you don't shower, You don't brush your teeth. Yeah. You don't use roll on. You don't use your deodorant. You don't dry off properly. You have to ensure that you dry off properly. So that means when you come out of the shower, you must dry under your arm. Yes, under your armpits. Like I'm showing you under my armpits, dry under your armpits. You must ensure that you dry behind your ears. Ensure that you dry your private parts. Yes, you have to dry everywhere. And did you know that it's important to dry between your toes? Yes. You said, oh, but I said, yes, it is important to dry rather between your toes. You might be like, what do you mean dry between my toes? If your toes have water in them or it is still wet, it can cause an odor. And we do not want that at all. Right, boys and girls? Remember, smelling bad or smelling like you need a shower is not nice. Do you see my friend on the screen here? And he says, who needs a shower? And you see all those green stuff coming from his armpits. That's saying that he did not bathe, he did not use any roll-on, any deodorant, and he's just running around smelling bad. And we don't want that. We don't want that at all. Now, another thing is caring for your teeth. No, I tell people this all the time, boys and girls, that I love a pretty smile. Can you smile for me? Smile, let me see. Yes, let me see all those pretty pearly white teeth. Whoa! You brush your teeth this morning. I can see because your smile is so bright and pretty. Smiling is important. You know, they say that when you smile, you extend or you add to your years of living. But you can't smile with ugly teeth. No. You have to ensure that you're smiling and your teeth are white and pretty. Dental hygiene requires you to brush your teeth thoroughly. Say it with me. Dental hygiene requires me to brush my teeth thoroughly. That is correct. Brush your teeth thoroughly, at least 2 times per day. And you must use a soft toothbrush. Now, let me tell you, you must ensure that you use a soft toothbrush to brush your teeth, right? Yes. You want to ensure that you're brushing everywhere. See? Everywhere. Even your gum. Did you know you need to brush your gum? Yes. And do not use any rough toothbrush. Now, growing up, they always tell me that you must ensure that the toothbrush is strong. But I learned this, that your toothbrush must be soft. Because if you brush your teeth with hard toothbrush, that can damage your teeth. And you don't want damaged teeth at all. So brushing your teeth with soft toothbrush is important. And always use toothpaste. Yes. You can't just get up and brush your teeth with water alone. No, you need toothpaste. And that helps to kill the germs and to give your mouth a nice smell. Do this with me. If you didn't brush your teeth, then you will smell not a nice smell. But if you do, and you brush your teeth earlier before class starts, then you will smell that nice minty flavor. And we encourage you to brush your teeth after every meal. Now, I know that I have boys and girls out there who may have braces like me, and you know that you ought to brush your teeth every time you eat, even if it is just a cookie. Why? Because it will be lodged between your teeth, and food lodged between your teeth will cause a bad odor, bad smell, and we do not want that at all. No, we do not want that at all. We want to ensure that we brush everything. So there is a motion in brushing. You must brush up, down, down, and around so that you take out the germs and you throw them out. And then you wash out your mouth, right? Good. Did you know that that's how you ought to brush? And as I said before, brush your gum. And most importantly, boys and girls, brush your tongue. Yes, you can't just brush your teeth alone, you know. You have to brush your tongue as well. Yes, because the bacteria is on the tongue. There are many of us, we brush our teeth, you know, and we have nice, pretty teeth. But we have bad breath. Why? Because we didn't brush our tongue. We forgot to brush the tongue. You cannot forget to brush your tongue. It is important to brush your tongue and to ensure that you clean it all off. Run go for your toothbrush. All right, don't run go for your toothbrush. When this is finished, you can run for your toothbrush and ensure that you brush your tongue again. Because I know some of you forgot to brush your tongue. Why? Because you're rushing to come to class today. So let's do a big recap on brushing our teeth. Because as I said before, it is important to have a pretty smile. You must brush your teeth at least twice per day or after every meal, once you can. You must ensure that you floss. Did I say that? You must ensure that you floss. No, you can have mommy or daddy to buy a floss for you, and you can use it to go between the teeth where the toothbrush bristle can't reach and take out those food particles. And ensure that you wash your mouth. Wash out all of those things that you'd have brushed from your teeth. Wash them out so that you can have a clean mouth. Now, I want to share with you a recap video all about brushing our teeth today. So sit back, relax, and watch this video with me. Let's go.
Enjoy this movie, then visit brainpop.com for much more. Man, it's been slow today. We're never going to make enough to... Whoa. I'm not sure we can actually get this baby any cleaner. Oh. Dear Tim and Moby, does it matter if I forget to brush my teeth or miss a shower or two? Why is this hygiene stuff so important? From Joy. Hygiene refers to all the things we do to keep our bodies clean. It includes daily activities like showering and brushing our teeth, and other routines that help us maintain a tidy appearance. Good hygiene is an essential part of being healthy. It's as important as a good diet, plenty of sleep, and regular exercise. Forgetting to keep clean can make growing up a lot harder. Well, classmates might start to avoid you if you're always dirty. And we all know how down we can get when we're left out. The physical effects of bad hygiene can leave you feeling even worse. You probably know how germs can make you sick. Viruses and bacteria are too tiny to see, but they're literally everywhere. There are trillions and trillions of them for every person on the planet. They're in the air and water, on our food, and all over our bodies. Not all germs are bad for us, Moby. Most are harmless, and some are even beneficial. Our intestines are home to bacteria that help us digest food. They break it down into the nutrition our bodies need. In fact, all bacteria are just looking for their next meal. Sometimes they find a feast in places that aren't so healthy. Our mouths are like five-star restaurants to bacteria. They collect into a thin film called plaque and chow down on food particles. As they digest food, it can make your breath unpleasant. And they also produce acids that eat away at our teeth and gums. That can lead to cavities, holes in your teeth. Right. Brushing and flossing regularly cuts off their food supply, and that prevents plaque from getting a foothold. After every meal is ideal, but in the morning and before bed for sure. Be gentle and use a soft bristle brush. Remember to brush all your teeth, and your tongue too. Hitting the 2-minute mark will ensure oral superiority. It's not just about your mouth. Bacteria love any hot, sticky place, like armpits, feet, and your private parts. Paying attention to those areas will prevent them from getting stinky or irritated. You have to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. Chances are they have some bad bacteria on them. Clean them for 15 seconds with warm, soapy water before you touch something else. Well, like scratching a scab or rubbing your eye. Germs can easily multiply in these places and cause an infection. That means they overwhelm your body's natural defenses. Infections can be painful and dangerous. Plus, you may need medicine to get rid of them. Yep, germs can live for a while on things like doorknobs and desks. That's why you should wash your hands regularly, not just after bathroom breaks. Use hand sanitizer if that's more convenient. Cleaning your personal space helps too, and not just for germs. Most people feel better when their stuff is neat and organized. It's just one less thing you have to worry about. Oh, right. As you approach puberty, some of your body systems kick into high gear. Your skin will produce more oils, which some bacteria love to eat. So you'll find that you really need a shower to keep from smelling funky. Deodorant can help with that too. So can washing your clothes, especially stuff like socks and underwear. The earlier you start these habits, the easier it'll be. It takes some work, but it's totally worth it. Keeping your body and personal space in order just makes you feel good.
All right, boys and girls. So we're coming to the end of our class session today, but I hope that you loved that video. It's just a video to recap what we have taught today, what we have learned today. Now I have an activity for you to do, and I want you to do it in your spare time. So watch me. Let's go. My activity is this. For all of you, let me go here and go. This is activity time, and this is what you get to do for me. If you're in grades 1 to 2 on a cartridge paper or in your book, I want you to draw the items you think that you need to ensure you practice personal hygiene. That's a brush, a comb, and soap, and other things that you may need. If you're in grades 3 and 4, I want you to be creative and write a song or a poem about why you should practice personal hygiene. And if you're in grade 5 and 6, I want you to write a story about someone who practices good personal hygiene. And guys, that's all the time I have for you today inside our guidance class. I want to remind you to stay clean and practice good personal hygiene. Thank you.
What if they knew that you abused her? Her family?
Mr. Jones.
And your colleagues, how will they look at an abuser? When the law comes knocking, you'll have nowhere to run.
Mr. Brown, you're under arrest. Please get up, hands behind your head and interlock your fingers.
Turn your back on abusers. Report gender-based violence to the police. There's no excuse for abuse. Call the Bureau of Gender Affairs at 876-754-8577.
COVID-19 is still here. Always wear your mask correctly while in public places, covering your nose and mouth at all times. Masks should never be worn over the head, under your chin, below your nose, or hanging from your ears. Recovery from COVID-19 can take up to 60 days or more. The mask or the ventilator? You choose. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Hello, students. Welcome again to another subject, resource and technology. And our topic for today is fashion and me. We're going to look at elements of design. What are the two elements we'll be looking at today? Lines and texture. From the observation of these pictures, we can see lines created and you can see textures. What are the objectives? 1, you'll be able to define the elements of lines and texture that will guide selection of clothes. 2, you'll be able to explain the basic rules and function of lines and textures used in designs. You'll be able to apply the principles of selecting lines and textures in fashion. Let us now discuss this picture. Looking at this picture, we can observe there are many different lines and we can observe some textures as well, showing both in the clothing and the accessories. How line works in fashion. Looking at these designs, you're seeing lines and they're going in several different directions. So let us find out what exactly are lines. What are lines? Lines create optical illusion and gives messages. The basic part of any design is formed by lines. The eyes tend to follow the direction of the lines in a garment design or on the fabric. Lines in fashion can be created by the structures or decorative features such as necklines, and you observe that below. Seams and hems as observed on the design below. From stripes, lines are obtained as well from plaids. Let us look at some examples of lines used in fashion design. The first one is a backpack, and we can see lines going in a particular direction. Look at this handbag. You can observe lines as well. Look at that hat. You can see lines going in some directions also. You look at this pair of shoes. You can observe several lines in these pairs of shoes. We have several different types of line. First one, vertical line. Horizontal line. Next, diagonal lines, curvy lines, structural lines, and decorative lines. Now we are going to look at how each line are created. First one, vertical lines. Vertical lines lead the eyes up and down, gives the illusion of height and thinness. When you observe this first picture, it appears the lady is tall. The next one, you're seeing the vertical lines going up and down. You observe it also on this t-shirt. Now let us look at horizontal lines. Horizontal lines give the illusion of width and shortness. Horizontal lines lead the eyes from left to right across the garment. Observe this design. The lower part of this garment you can see, or more costume. This looks more like a costume. The lower part of this costume has horizontal lines. You see horizontal lines on the tights. The skirt of this dress, and on this dress, there are several layers that made up the lower part of the dress, and you're seeing vertical lines being formed. Now let us look at diagonal lines. Diagonal lines are slant lines that draw your eyes' attention to where they are used. Diagonal lines are often found in V-necks. There you can see one shoulder dresses, observed below, in stripe, and also on crisscross straps on this shoe. Now let us look at curvy lines. Curvy lines lead the eye around the garment. They create a feeling of movement. Observe the skirt. The curvy lines here are obtained based on the construction of the fabric. These curvy lines on this dress are obtained by joining pieces of fabric together. At the hemline of this blouse, you can observe curvy lines. Now let us look at structural lines. Structural lines are created by the formation of seams. We'll observe this blouse below. Seams are where you join two pieces of fabric together. From the observation of this blouse, we are seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. Wherever those 4 pieces are joined, creates a structural line. Pleated skirts, you are seeing structural lines. On this dress, you observe darts, and darts are structural lines. Now let us look at decorative lines. Decorative lines are created purely for decoration. Example, buttons, laces, flaps, and printed fabric. We observe the lace trim on this dress along with the pattern in the fabric. We can observe this as a trim onto this outfit. And we observe the buttons and the belt forming the decoration on this dress. Now we're going to look at another element of design, and that is texture. What exactly is texture? Texture is one element that you can see and feel. Fabric can have a variety of textures, all of which can affect the look of a garment or fashion accessories. Textures can be found in the thickness and appearance of a fabric or an article. There are two main types of textures. Tactile. What do we mean by tactile? Tactile are textures that can be felt by touching. And an example is softness, as seen in this sweater. The other type is visual. Texture can be seen. So, one example of a visual texture is shiny. as you observe in examples of how textures are used in fashion. We look at that bag. Looks nice, but it looks coarse. We look at this other bag, also looking good, but it looks soft. When you look at this shoe, you look at this shoe, has a combination of two types. At the front, straps look coarse, and at the back to the heel looks smooth. So there we can see textures being used more than one in one article. Now there are some words we use to describe texture. First one, soft. Next one, bulky, shiny, dull, smooth, rough, and crisp. Observe the picture. Based off the outfits, you can see textures reflecting in some of the outfits along with their accessories. Let's look at soft texture. It hugs and emphasizes the body. Example, a fur jacket, as you observe in this design. The next one, bulky texture. It hides the body shape and make you look larger and heavier. An example is a coat. Observe in this design as well. The next one is shiny texture. It reflects light and may make a figure look larger, as well as revealing figure irregularities. An example, satin, you observe in this design. Silk observes in the other design. And leather observed in this design as well. Let's look at dull texture. It absorbs light and generally makes the figure look smaller. Look at these examples. The next one is smooth texture. Smooth or flat texture will make you appear smaller than your actual size. An example, this nightgown. Let's look at rough texture. Rough or coarse texture adds volume to a large figure and may overpower small figures. Look at this jacket. You can observe the roughness of the jacket. This sweater looks heavy and coarse. At the front of this design, the embellishment appears coarse. This jeans as well appear to be coarse. Let's look at stiff and crisp texture. Crisp and stiff texture stands away from the body and hides figure irregularity. Those examples you can observe from the design. Look at those two little girls. You're seeing that their skirts are standing away from their body, which make you know that this material is stiff. In concluding, students, lines are elements of design that sends messages and gives garment structure. The direction of lines affect the overall design of clothing. Texture is observed in how the fabric or article looks and feel. The type of texture selected will affect the appearance of the overall total look. Now it's activity time. Are you ready? Let's go. We have two activity. The first one, activity 1. You are to source copies of 4 dress template from the internet's image, along with a pack of pencil crayons or a pack of wax crayons. You'll use the templates along with the crayons to create designs, and those designs will represent types of lines. What are the types of lines you'll do? First one, you'll do an horizontal line. Then you're going to do a diagonal line. Then you're going to do a decorative line. And then you're going to do a vertical lines. Now I know, students, you will enjoy this activity because you will be able to create your new look, which will represent these 4 lines. Remember, most times we will say our design is spoiled, but there's no design that is spoiled, students. A design that you may think is spoiled may create or give birth to a new and different look that nobody has seen before. So you have fun, and I know you will enjoy it. Let's look at my templates that I used. I used 4 templates, and I'm going to identify 4 lines that I have used. Now, here's my completed activity. First one, can anybody tell me what type of lines did I create here? Did somebody say decorative? You are correct. I'll go to my next template. I created a, what type of lines did I create? Somebody say vertical? You are correct. Go to my next template. What type of lines did I create here? Did somebody say vertical, diagonal? You are correct. So this is a diagonal line. What design did I create on this template? Did somebody say horizontal? You are correct. Let's go. Okay, students, let us look at activity 2. Activity 2. You're to look at the pictures on the slide and identify the types of textures observed in each. Let's identify the texture. Number 1. What type of texture are we seeing? Yes, it is shiny. Number 2. This looks like a pair of jeans. What type of texture are you seeing? Did somebody say rough? You are correct. Let's look at this teddy bear. What type of texture are you seeing? Did you say soft? You are correct. Let's look at these nails again. What type of texture are you seeing on these nails? Did you say dull? Yes, they are dull. Let's look at this night dress. What type of texture are you seeing in this dress? Did you say smooth? Yes, but I did hear somebody say it is shiny as well. Yes, it can be shiny as well as it is smooth, but we are going to use smooth for our texture for this session. Let's look at number 6. Number 6, it's a leather jacket. What type of texture are you seeing? Yes, it is shiny. Let us look at number 7. What type of texture are you seeing in number 7? Did somebody say bulky? You are correct. Students, we have come to the end of today's session. Join me next time when I'll be looking at principles of design. See you soon.
As an inner city youth, I'm a duty to know the laws and my rights. These laws affect all our self-interest and safety.
The law says throwing garbage in public places or on other premises without consent will lead to prosecution. My seat online. I know my laws and my rights. Do you?
Know your laws. Know your rights. Respect you.